Mortal Kombat recently released in theaters and on HBO Max, and is the latest film adaptation of the popular video game fighter series. This is just the third live-action adaptation, with the first releasing in 1995 and its sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, in 1997. The 90s movies are notoriously cheesy, and that isn't really a bad thing because this new film is just as cheesy at times. However, those older films are really just bad movies that even most Mortal Kombat fans aren't really a fan of. Aside from an animated film, there hasn't really been another Mortal Kombat film until now. Now, yes, I talk about movies here a lot, but I'm also a huge video game fan, and the Mortal Kombat series is one that I've been playing since I was a kid. I even had a terrible Sub-Zero spin-off game for the original PlayStation. Thankfully, Sub-Zero is way more enjoyable in this film. So as a fan, there wasn't much that I needed to satisfy me here. I didn't need the second coming of Citizen Kane or something mind-blowing story-wise. In fact, the Mortal Kombat games have been getting a lot of praise over the last few years for having pretty competent stories for fighting games, which in the video game industry, fighting games are notorious for just having terrible stories. So using that same expectation on an adaptation of Mortal Kombat in film, I just wanted something that was competent and took me from A to B, and this film did that for me. Now, an interesting risk that this film takes that I don't feel really lands well is the inclusion of a brand new character to the series named Cole. Now, I'm fine with creating a new character for the film, but my issue here is that the nature of his character does very little to justify his inclusion in this film. Cole is far from interesting, and he's more or less a caricature of the struggling fighter stories that we've seen in countless other movies over the past few years. So the film truly shines its best when the more well-known characters from the series are on the screen. As far as well-known characters, I think most people won't like Kano, but I felt that he was perfect and spot on in relation to his video game counterpart. Raiden is exactly the same. Sonya, Jax, the whole original Mortal Kombat roster, they're pretty much brought to life perfectly here. The standouts, though, were of course Scorpion and Sub-Zero. The conflict between these two characters is translated to screen masterfully. The opening 15 minutes of the film really reels you in by fully exploring in just a few minutes the humanity of Scorpion, which is impressive considering that in the games and later on in the film adaptation, he's a demon ninja from hell basically. The opening fight with him defending himself alone in the village was a fantastic opener and showed right away why this film earned its R rating. But I've always been more of a Sub-Zero fan, and the film delivers on making him look as cool as he can, pun intended. His fights are visceral and brutal, and a lot of the moves he does in the film are ripped straight from the video games. He's the most feared fighter in the film, and that's apparent as soon as he comes on screen for the first time against Scorpion. There are a few downsides to this film, and as an action movie fan and a fan of the game franchise, they may seem a bit picky to most, but there are issues nonetheless. First, the fights are not as well choreographed or shot as they should be. The camera often cuts entirely too much in scenes, to the point where you have no clue what is going on in the fight. Now, this was an editing style for action movies that was insanely popular during the mid-2000s to early 2010s, and I hoped it would stay there, but here it is. That compounded with the heavy emphasis on fatalities hurts the fighting aspects of the film. Fatalities are finishing moves on your opponent in the games, and it was a nice treat to see that translated on film, to the point where characters even say,
Fatality.
But the lead up to these finishers are often weak and less bloody than the games are. With an R rating, they should have been able to add more intensity to these fights. The only ones that feel as intense as the games are the Sub-Zero and Scorpion fights. It would have been nice to see the whole film really match that energy of those scenes. The writing for how each character gets their powers or weapons they have in the games is incredibly lazy as well. It's explained as a random magical power of sorts that they receive after they've earned it through sort of training or some type of high stress situations. Now, it sounds cool until you see characters like Jax and Kano magically receive metal arms and a metal eye respectively. It's a stark contrast from the games that give more logical explanations for why they have these certain abilities. Aside from these critiques, Mortal Kombat is a great time, especially if you're a fan of the video games. Now, I would definitely recommend checking this out, especially with other people, because of how enjoyable the fight scenes are. A film like this just needs to be 2 hours of pure fun and fights, and this film delivers on that perfectly. But if you've seen the film, what do you guys think of it? Comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.